China, once a mystical land of dynasties and dragons, has undergone a meteoric rise in the past century, transforming from a largely agrarian society to a global powerhouse. Its roaring economy, guided by the principles of socialism with Chinese characteristics, has resulted in advancements in technology, military prowess, and infrastructural development that few could have foreseen. This Eastern Titan, with its rich tapestry of history, was reshaping not only its own fate but also the global economic landscape. Meanwhile, Europe, with its diverse mosaic of cultures, languages, and histories, has stood as a beacon of democracy and cooperative economics. The European Union, birthed from the ashes of devastating world wars, was built on the foundation of unity, prosperity, and peace. As it expanded, bringing in nation after nation into its fold, the EU positioned itself as a formidable entity in the global arena, driving innovations, trade deals, and diplomatic relations. However, as the two giants danced on the world stage, their interplay was anything but straightforward. Their economic intertwinement started innocuously, with China seeking European technology and markets, and the EU eyeing China's vast consumer base and manufacturing capabilities. Yet, with time, these relations began showing signs of strain and concern. The EU's goods trade deficit with China ballooned, particularly in the post-COVID-19 era. It skyrocketed to €396 billion, $432 billion, in 2022, a leap from the €145 billion back in 2016. The reason? Imports from China more than doubled, while European exports saw a modest 50% rise. Suddenly, China was responsible for 1/5 of the EU's goods imports and only a fraction of its exports. The specifics of what was imported painted an even more vivid picture. Europe found itself swamped with Chinese-made electronics, textiles, machinery, and automotive parts. These goods often overshadowed local European products in terms of price, thanks to China's cost-effective manufacturing processes and a vast labor force. Even in areas like renewable energy, where Europe hoped to lead, the continent became increasingly dependent on Chinese-manufactured solar panels and wind turbines. Luxury goods, on the other hand, flowed from Europe to China, as the burgeoning Chinese middle class developed a taste for European brands, from fashion to automobiles, signifying Europe's dominant cultural influence in certain niches. However, the sheer volume and diversity of goods from China posed a challenge to the EU's indigenous industries. Local manufacturers struggled to compete on pricing, leading to job losses in certain sectors. Europe's famed textile industries in places like Italy faced fierce competition from Chinese imports, altering the dynamics of marketplaces that had thrived for centuries. Similarly, European tech industries had to grapple with the influx of affordable Chinese tech products, from smartphones to laptops, which captivated consumers with their blend of quality and affordability. It wasn't just a matter of economic numbers, it was about the very fabric of European commerce and industry undergoing a seismic shift. Furthermore, there was an undeniable shift in the power dynamics at the negotiating table. With such a hefty trade imbalance, China began leveraging its economic muscle to influence diplomatic and trade discussions. Europe, often finding itself on the back foot, had to navigate these negotiations with a delicate balance between asserting its interests and accommodating China's rising demands. Decisions related to market access, technology transfer, and even human rights issues became intertwined with the intricate web of trade, further complicating the EU's approach to China. European industries began sounding alarms. The dependence on Chinese products, from electronics to pharmaceutical ingredients, had implications far beyond mere trade deficits. With Europe's strategic sectors, from ports to energy grids, seeing increasing Chinese investments, concerns over security, intellectual property rights, and strategic autonomy emerged. Debates raged over the potential risks of having critical infrastructure under foreign ownership, especially when that ownership could be linked back to a geopolitical rival. The ripple effects of such extensive Chinese investments were felt in every corner of European society. The old continent, known for its robust industrial heritage, was facing an unexpected conundrum. An over-reliance on Chinese-manufactured goods meant that entire sectors became vulnerable to supply chain disruptions. Events like natural disasters, political upheavals, or even trade embargoes could jeopardize the availability of essential goods. In the pharmaceutical sector, for instance, the dependency on Chinese ingredients became a significant concern. Any interruption could directly impact the health and well-being of millions of Europeans, given the vital role of medicines in public health. Furthermore, the extensive Chinese reach into Europe's strategic assets wasn't just about controlling goods, it was about influence and power. Owning critical parts of European infrastructure, such as ports, meant a stake in controlling Europe's trade arteries. There was the port of Piraeus in Greece, for example, once a symbol of European maritime might, but now a strategic asset in Chinese hands. This raised eyebrows across European capitals. What would happen if political tensions escalated, and China decided to flex its muscles by slowing down or even halting operations in such key infrastructures? The implications went beyond economics, they touched on the very sovereignty of European nations. Additionally, the intellectual property, IP, realm became a battleground. Europe, with its rich history of innovation and invention, found its IP rights under threat. There were growing concerns about technology transfers, where European companies felt compelled to share their technological secrets as a price for accessing the Chinese market. Stories circulated of copied designs, patent infringements, and corporate espionage, casting a shadow over the EU-China trade relationship. As more European companies voiced their concerns about the potential theft of their innovations, the sentiment of mistrust grew, prompting many to question the long-term viability of the economic partnership. This was not purely economic, the cultural and political elements were intertwined. As China's influence grew, so did its confidence in promoting its political model and values. European values of democracy, freedom of speech, and human rights started clashing with China's approach to governance, particularly in areas like Hong Kong and Xinjiang. The EU, a coalition built on shared democratic principles, began questioning its relationship with a nation whose ideology differed so starkly. The fabric of European society, woven together with threads of Enlightenment ideals, was beginning to feel the tug and pull of an opposing force. The rise of Confucius institutes across European campuses, for example, brought forth both an appreciation for Chinese language and culture, as well as concerns about academic freedom and potential propaganda. Critics argued that these institutions, often funded and operated under the umbrella of the Chinese government, were more than just cultural exchange centers. They became points of contention, with allegations of them being utilized to shape narratives and suppress any discourse critical of Beijing. Europe's bustling squares and open forums, which for centuries have been arenas of free thought and debate, now bore witness to a new dynamic. Protests in support of Hong Kong's democracy or against the treatment of Uyghurs in Xinjiang were met with counter-protests. These incidents unveiled the starkly contrasting worldviews between the European public and the Chinese diaspora influenced by Beijing's perspective. The ripple effects were felt in European politics too. Politicians found themselves walking a tightrope, balancing the economic interests tied to China and the moral obligation to uphold the values their constituencies held dear. The internal dynamics of the European Union, a body that prided itself on shared democratic values, were tested as well. Member states began to diverge in their approach to China. While some nations, driven by economic interests, advocated for a softer stance, others pushed for a more assertive approach, particularly in defense of human rights. The tension was palpable in the corridors of Brussels. The EU, which often aimed to present a unified front, grappled with formulating a cohesive China policy. The balancing act of maintaining diplomatic relations with Beijing, while not compromising on core European principles, became an intricate dance. The hypothetical fallout between China and the EU would have cascading effects. The EU could face severe disruptions in supply chains, potentially crippling industries reliant on Chinese imports. On the other hand, China would lose one of its significant markets, affecting its export-driven economic model. More importantly, a rift would destabilize global political harmony. With two of the world's largest economies at odds, diplomatic tensions could lead to a new Cold War-like environment, where nations are forced to pick sides. Still skeptical about the potential fallout? Dive deeper with us. The ripple effects of a strained relationship between China and the EU would be monumental, echoing through every facet of global dynamics. Firstly, the interconnected world of today's global economy means that any disruption between two major players would send shockwaves far and wide. European businesses, already ingrained in the intricate web of Chinese manufacturing and logistics, might face skyrocketing costs as they scramble to find alternative sources. This could result in price hikes for everyday products, from electronics to clothing, putting immense pressure on the average European consumer. Moreover, this disruption would also hurt China's booming middle class. The EU is not just any market. It's a vast consumer base with a penchant for high-quality goods, many of which are produced in China. Losing such a substantial market could slow China's economic growth, leading to potential domestic unrest as jobs become scarcer and the economic dreams of millions could be put on hold. But the economic implications are just the tip of the iceberg. A strained Sino-European relationship could escalate into a diplomatic quagmire. The global political arena would become a chessboard, with nations evaluating their strategic interests and recalibrating alliances. Smaller countries, especially those within the sphere of influence of these two giants, would be placed in a precarious position, having to navigate the turbulent waters of geopolitics without antagonizing either side. Furthermore, collaborations on pressing global challenges, such as climate change, pandemics, and peacekeeping missions, would suffer. Instead of pooling resources and knowledge to combat shared threats, both entities might turn inwards, prioritizing national interests over global solutions. Lastly, with cultural and academic exchanges being curtailed, a generation could grow up with a skewed perception of the other. Misunderstandings would breed mistrust, and the bridges painstakingly built over decades of cooperation could quickly crumble. In essence, the world would become a more fragmented and polarized place, echoing the divisions of eras gone by. The shift in dynamics from mutual benefit to cautionary engagement underscores the complexities of international relations. As the EU evaluates its stance, it faces a critical juncture: how to balance economic interests with safeguarding its values, security, and strategic autonomy. The tale of the EU's evolving relationship with China serves as a poignant reminder that in the intricate dance of geopolitics, steps must be taken with foresight and wisdom. Still wondering why the EU fears China? The answer lies at the intersection of economic dependencies, strategic takeovers, and clashing ideologies. As the EU grapples with an imbalance in trade, it finds its industries potentially held hostage by the sheer volume of imports. Beyond economics, the ownership of critical European assets by China signals a potential threat to the continent's very sovereignty. But, perhaps most concerning of all, is the ideological chasm. The pillars of European democracy, freedom, and human rights find themselves at odds with China's political model. In the great narrative of geopolitics, the EU's trepidation stems from this intricate mix of economic, strategic, and philosophical challenges. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful or enjoyable, please give it a thumbs up. To stay updated with our latest content, make sure to hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell. Your support is truly appreciated. See you in the next video.